Every empire in history believed the same thing, that it would last forever. Look at it. The armies, the roads that stretch to the edge of the known world, the people cheering in the streets, the gold, the sun that never seems to set on it. At its peak, an empire doesn't look fragile. It looks permanent, untouchable, eternal. But underneath the throne, in the stone, nobody thinks to check. A crack has already started. It's thin, it's silent, and nobody is looking down. Because when you're standing at the very top, the ground feels like the last thing that could ever fail you. But no empire starts as an empire. It starts as one person, standing on empty ground, wanting more. Ambition. Then a second person. A handshake. An agreement that we're stronger together than apart. They build a wall. Others come and join them because safety attracts people. They take a hill. They plant a flag. Someone steps forward to lead, and the others lift him up. Then something quiet and powerful happens. They start to trade. Huts become a town. Roads reach outward. The town becomes a city of stone and columns. And one day, someone places a crown on a head and calls the whole thing an empire. Every collapse in history begins with a moment exactly like this one. What follows is the Golden Age. Markets overflow. Builders raise monuments meant to outlive everyone alive. Scholars teach. Aqueducts carry water across impossible distances. Armies come home dragging treasure behind them. There are feasts. There is confidence. And there is money, real money, heavy gold, stamped and trusted, backed by something you can hold in your hand. The borders push further out every year. The people are comfortable. The emperor looks at his own reflection in a gold coin and sees a man who cannot lose. This is the part everyone remembers. The statues, the glory, the peak. But peaks are not places you stay. They're places you pass through. The first crack is size. An empire grows because growing feels like winning. But every new mile of territory is another mile you have to defend. The borders stretch thin. Soldiers stand further and further apart, guarding land they've never seen the center of. A message takes weeks to cross the empire, so by the time the capital learns about a problem, the problem is already a disaster. The army becomes the single largest expense in history, and the treasury starts to drain. Distant provinces are neglected, then forgotten, then lost. Two frontiers get attacked at once, and there simply aren't enough soldiers to be in both places. Supply lines snap. And the emperor learns the lesson every empire learns too late. Bigger is not stronger. Bigger is just heavier. So, he needs money. And here is where empires make their most predictable mistake. He can't raise enough taxes. He can't conquer fast enough. So, he melts the coins down. And when he pours them back into the molds, he adds a little cheap metal to the gold. The new coin looks almost the same. It's thinner, duller, mostly worthless. But there are more of them. Rome did this for 200 years, until a silver coin was barely 5% silver. And the result is always identical. Prices rise. A handful of coins buys a crumb of bread. People start hiding the real gold and spending the fake. And eventually, money stops, meaning anything at all, because money was never metal. Money was trust. And trust, once broken, does not get reminted. The third crack opens inside society itself. The wealth doesn't disappear, it concentrates. A tiny few sit on mountains of gold while a vast majority stands below with empty hands. The gap stops being a gap and becomes a canyon. The rich stop seeing the poor as their countrymen. Taxes crush the people who can least afford them, while the wealthy simply buy their way out with a quiet coin to the right official. The middle, the part that holds everything together, slides down into the bottom. Resentment builds, then protests, then two halves of one country that hate each other more than they fear any enemy. An empire this divided doesn't need to be conquered. It's already been beaten from the inside. The fourth crack is at the very top. Officials stop serving and start skimming. Leaders throw parties while the frontier burns. Power becomes something you fight your own people for. Bribes move faster than laws. Weak rulers are crowned and discarded. Rome once burned through more than 20 emperors in 50 years. Laws get ignored, then torn up. Allies betray each other in hallways, and the people stop believing that anyone in charge is on their side. That's the real death. Not the corruption itself, but the moment ordinary people conclude the system is rigged and stop showing up for it. What's left is a government that argues endlessly and does nothing. A throne with a lonely man on it, and an empire that is completely hollow at the center. And that is exactly when the outsiders arrive. They were always there waiting at the edges for decades. They didn't get stronger, the empire got weaker. So they test the wall, and they find it soft. The wall breaks, panic floods the streets, frontier flags fall one after another. And when the capital calls for reinforcements, the barracks are empty because nobody wants to die for a state that stopped protecting them. The enemy pours through the gates, fire climbs the rooftops. The emperor watches his own city burn through a window with nothing left to command. People think this is the fall. It isn't. It's just the invoice for everything that came before. In the year 410, Rome was sacked for the first time in 800 years. In 476, the last Western emperor was quietly removed, and nobody even bothered to replace him. There was no final battle. The columns cracked, the people left. A boy sat on a throne with a crown that no longer meant anything, and someone simply took it off his head. The seat of the greatest power on earth sat empty. Monuments fell, the city emptied out. Grass grew through the marble, and on the maps, borders that took 1,000 years to draw quietly faded away. Rome didn't explode. Rome dissolved, and almost nobody living through it realized they were watching the end of their world. Now watch it happen again. And again, every empire that ever rose, the same 5 cracks, in the same order. Overreach, debased money, extreme inequality, rotten leadership, and enemies who simply wait. Different crowns, same ruins. Which brings us to the uncomfortable part. Look at the last few decades and ask honestly. Military commitments stretched across the planet. Currencies printed at record speed. Wealth concentrating at the top faster than at any time in a century. Trust in leaders at historic lows. A public split into 2 halves that can barely speak to each other. None of that guarantees collapse. Empires aren't destroyed by fate. They're destroyed by choices made slowly, by people who assume someone else is watching the foundation. So, here's the only question that actually matters. Is anyone looking down?